It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk a little bit about something that's very near and dear to my heart, science communication. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Joanna Northover, and I'm actually very new to the MSI facility community. I've only been in my role now for maybe just over 6 months. But my background is in science communication and outreach. So just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, I did an undergraduate and master's degree in earth sciences, so I have that background in sciences. But after I finished my master's degree, I found myself drawn to science communication, and I ended up moving into museum education and interpretation. I worked at the Canadian Museum of Nature part-time while I was finishing my master's degree, and I then moved on to the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology and spent years there developing science communication and outreach skills in different settings. And then during the pandemic, I took those skills and I jumped onto social media because I was stuck at home alone with a couple of young kiddos and needed a little distraction, if you know what I mean. And so I took what I had learned and I adapted it to social media, and I started doing science communication on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and things like that. And so I'm hoping today to give you a little bit of some of my experiences and what I've learned over the years, and try and bring that here to be helpful to you. And I think hopefully there should be some things here that you can take forward and might be useful to you. And I would just like to say that so far I've had a fantastic time. I've learned so much. This has been such a fantastic way of orienting myself more to this wonderful community of MSI facilities and all the amazing work that you're doing. So there are a couple of instructions here on the screen. So for those of you who are sitting with your own MSIs, I would like you to try and find somebody that you don't know to sit with, and try to fill up tables if you can, because we're going to be working in groups. And also, please use the QR code or the code at the top of the screen to join this WooClap event, because we're going to have some interactive polling questions. So if you guys could jump on there to make sure that it's working, that would be fantastic. So I'll leave that up for a few seconds so everybody can join. Hopefully it's working okay. Does it ask? I hope it's not asking you to, like, it should be just anybody can go in. Oh, you got in? You're good? Okay, fantastic. It's not showing any participants, but I'm sure it'll be okay. Is it okay? It's good? You're in? It's what? Oh, good, we have 66. Okay, I looked over there, it was 0. Everybody jumped in at once. This is fantastic. Okay, I think there's a few more than 66 folks here, so I'll just wait a couple more seconds for everybody to join so that we can have everybody's participation. And I'm hoping to be able to share the results of some of these polls later on if the CFI folks are able to help me with that. So you guys can have this information whenever you'd like to look at it again. Okay, perfect. Okay, all those, that looks good, that looks good. Okay, so you should still be able to join. Has everybody got the QR code who needs to get the QR code? Everybody's got it? This is your last chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Hands up if you need help. No? We're okay? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to start this presentation by asking you a question. And that is, I want you to tell me what you think science communication is, okay? So that's our first WooClap question. If you can click the screen, it should start, and then you can enter your answers. I want you to describe as quickly as you can what you think science communication entails, and then we'll sort of see the answers up on the screen. Before I tell you what I think it is, it's good to know what you guys think it is. Ooh, okay. Right. Oh, I like that. Okay. Whoa. This is very exciting. I don't know what KISS is though. I'm not familiar with that. Oh, okay. I like that. Okay. I gotta take that. I gotta take that moving forward. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Oh my gosh, the words are going crazy. Once everybody's sort of answered, it should settle down, but it looks like we're taking scientific research, we're sharing it with the public, we're telling our story, we're communicating knowledge, we're sharing, story, telling, research, science. Okay, impact. I like that word, impact. Lots of good. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, so it seems like we're sort of settling on some major themes here. And that's we're taking the science, we're taking the research. It's complex, but we're sharing that knowledge with the public in ways that are understandable, that give us, that tell us about, that tell them about the impact. We're sharing, we're telling, we're communicating. Okay, I like that. I think that's a pretty good definition. I would like to tell you how I think of science communication. So I think of science communication as a type of interpretation. What do I mean by that? Well, the most common sort of definition you might think of for interpretation is you take something in one language and you translate it to another. And that is kind of what science communication is, right? We're taking our research and we're trying to put it into terms that can be understood by somebody else who maybe doesn't speak the same scientific language that we do. So if you take a look at what it means to interpret something, this Merriam-Webster's definition, I just grabbed whichever one, they define to interpret something as to explain or tell the meaning of and to present in understandable terms. And I really liked how those two things came out, right? We have to make sure that when we're doing science communication, we are explaining the meaning of something. How is it meaningful to the person we're communicating with? And we also have to keep in mind that we're putting it in understandable terms. Okay, so that's why I like this idea of science communication as interpretation. But interpretation has another definition, and that is the one that's been used in museums and science centers. So you may have heard of heritage interpretation, it's called. It's actually a set of principles and ideas that were developed in the US park systems in like the 1950s. And it was the interpretive principles were first written down in a book by this gentleman, Freeman Tilden, in 1957. So really old ideas. And he defined this heritage interpretation as an educational activity which aims to reveal meaning and relationships through the use of original objects by firsthand experience and by illustrative media rather than simply to communicate factual information. And I would argue that science communication is a form of this heritage interpretation. It is science interpretation. And so what are those interpretive principles that he laid down all those years ago that sort of guide this idea of how museums, science centers, park guides interpret information for the public? So I have simplified them here, but I will read you his actual ones, which are a little bit more wordy. So I've distilled them into some simple principles here. But the first principle of interpretation is that interpretation must relate to the experience of the visitor to have meaning. So whatever you're trying to explain to your audience, it has to be meaningful to them or else the information is not going to go in. So what I take from that is you have to make sure you're relating to your audience, okay? The second interpretive principle is that interpretation is not only information, but a process of revelation built upon it. So we're not really in the business of just feeding information to our audience. We're trying to reveal the meaning behind that information and make it meaningful to that person. So I'm going to come back to this a lot, but please, we don't want to just list facts. We want to make connections between ideas to tell a complete story. The third interpretive principle is that interpretation is a teachable art. So that's good news for all of you, right? Teachable means that you guys can all learn it if you want. It combines many forms of expression. So it's not just necessarily about learning the information, it's also different ways of expressing the information. It can be done in different ways. I've seen interpretive programs that are plays, songs, dances. That might be a little bit beyond what we're doing here. That's maybe a little outside of science communication, but it just shows you that there's a range of different ways to present information that will connect with different audiences and can be packaged in different ways. The fourth interpretive principle is that it has the main aim of provocation rather than instruction. So it's not meant to be an educational lecture like you would maybe see in a university setting. It's meant to be provoking some kind of action or feeling or understanding in whoever you're interpreting to. And the fifth one is that interpretations should present the whole story rather than separate parts. So you want to have a complete narrative. It doesn't have to be every single detail that's encompassed, right? But whatever you do interpret, whatever you do communicate, you want to make sure that you follow that idea through as a complete story. And then the last one I didn't put up here, and I was going to just mention in passing, but after some of the discussions yesterday about outreach to high school and even elementary school to get them interested in science and that idea of, the social license to do the work that we do, the sixth interpretive principle is that interpretation for children should be designed with a distinct approach rather than a simplified version of adult programs. So remember, we're going to talk about this later, but science communication and interpretation is a lot about tailoring your information to the audience you're presenting to and understanding what their frame of reference is. And of course, speaking with a little kiddo, their frame of reference is very different than ours, and how they view the world is very different. And it doesn't mean that they can't understand the same complex material that we do. We just have to make sure we present it in a way that is, better integrated into their own experiences, right? And their own pre-existing knowledge and framework. So I would then argue that science communication and science interpretation are kind of interchangeable, at least when you're talking about when you present to the public. Sometimes people use the term science communication to talk about anytime you're presenting science, like maybe a publication would be considered science communication in a way, but there your audience is the scientific community, so it's a very different approach, but you can still use the same sort of principles. And then I had this, why would you care about these interpretive principles and why science interpretation is science communication, and me nerding out about all these things, like why would that be relevant to you? And I was sort of concerned that maybe when I was doing this presentation, people might not think that it was relevant to their particular roles. But as I watched the panels and the presentations, I've been hearing over and over and over again how important it is for us to be able to tell our stories to a wide audience. And our public is maybe not just the general public. Even within our own MSIs, what we do at one MSI might not be something that we're familiar with, at another MSI. Even talking with each other about what we do, we have to keep that in mind and maybe adjust our communication. And also enabling CFI then to be able to share our stories as well. If we can frame what we do in a way that is accessible to a wide audience, that makes it even easier for them to share our stories. So I have another question for you now. And that is, I want to just know at your MSIs, what kind of public science communication do you currently engage in that you're aware of? So if we could click the screen, my friend, can we click the screen? Hello. Sorry. Can we click the screen? Sorry about that. I don't have my clicker. So we'll click the screen. Perfect. So the poll is open. So I came up with these just off the top of my head. I'm sure I missed some. So that is where the other comes in. And you should have the ability to make a comment if you like. But an obvious one would be social media posts, maybe for a general audience, maybe in-person outreach events, virtual outreach events like workshops or lecture series, or even Reddit AMAs. Have you guys ever heard of that? Ask Me Anything on Reddit. You have like a scientist that comes on and people can just ask their questions in real time. It's kind of fun. We also have guided facility tours. So when the people come to you versus you going to them. And maybe news articles or formal interviews on podcasts, things like that. And then other. So I don't have the ability, I think, to open the comments, but I will be very interested to see what they are when I look at the results later on. So yeah, perfect. Okay, I'll give a little bit of time for people to finish this up. And I think this is interesting, right? It's interesting to see what kind of public science communication we're already engaging in. And hopefully by the end, we'll get some new ideas for different things that we can try. All right. This is always the hardest part of a Woo Clap event where I'm waiting for everybody to answer and I have to just like fill this empty time. I don't have any performances prepared that I could fill the time with. So, all right. So it looks like social media is the biggest one. And I understand that. I understand that because it's the barrier to entry is quite low, right? There's, you know, the platforms already exist. You just have to make the content. There's not really that much cost involved. Unless you want to get verified nowadays. Like that's kind of annoying. On X, you have to like be verified to be able to edit your posts. I was like, what? What is this? I don't like that. Yeah, and then it looks like a lot of people do facility tours as well. This is something we do at the André Lalonde, the National Facility for AMS. It's one of the parts of the job that I have really enjoyed so far. In fact, I had a group come through of 9 and 10-year-olds. They were part of a Lego team. They were doing a project on archaeology, so they wanted to come and learn about radiocarbon dating in French. And it was great. They had a blast, and they ended up winning a couple of awards of most innovative project, something like that at the Lego meet, and they were very grateful for that. So lab tours sometimes can be very formal, but it is nice sometimes to have the younger folks come in. So they had a great time. Okay, perfect. So we have all these different types of science communication that we're doing to the public, right? So we're reaching the public in many different ways, mostly through social media, guided tours, and maybe some formal communication through the media. So it's important then for us to keep an eye on the science that we're communicating and how we're communicating it, because bad science communication can lead to some miscommunication sometimes. I know from personal experience, I've been involved with some research projects where we were interviewed for a news article, and they got the age of the fossil we were working on off by 10 million years, which to them probably didn't seem like a big deal, but is very important when you're talking to other paleontologists. So just some miscommunication there because maybe we weren't communicating our project quite clearly enough. It can also sometimes lead inadvertently to misinformation. So again, my background's in paleontology. That's what I talk about on social media, in my own personal science communication. I don't know if any of you have heard about the whole T-Rex had wings thing. Has anybody heard of this? It is rampant. Oh my gosh. Everybody on TikTok and Instagram thinks that T-Rex had wings, that the paleontologist missed it, and look at the bone. No, and it's funny, but it's not like like these videos get millions and millions and millions of views. And so if a paleontologist is presenting about their new fossil tyrannosaur and they mention it looked like a dragon, then suddenly the T-Rex had wings, T-Rex as a dragon, misinformation videos look all that more plausible, right? And that's not what the paleontologist is saying. They're just saying, hey, this is a cool big creature that's super awesome looking, but just inadvertently using that one word could spread that misinformation by accident, right? And then also when we do bad science communication and we're perhaps not presenting things in a way that's accessible to a wider audience, it can sometimes fuel this mistrust in science because they don't necessarily maybe understand what we're trying to say, or they think maybe we're trying to talk down to them, or that we're not taking their views into consideration, and that can sort of create like a disconnect between, you know, us in the scientific community and the rest of the general public. So where should we start with good science communication? So whenever I'm coming up with a new video or news article or anything like that, there's two things that I really want to pin down. And the first is, what do you want to say? What is the message that you're trying to convey? And what action are you trying to provoke? Do you want them to want to learn more? Do you want them to just be generally aware? Do you want them to come and visit your facility? Do you want them to participate in citizen science? There's lots of different actions you could want to provoke, right? Do you want them to take action in their own lives, right? Maybe you're advocating for something that could, I don't know, reduce waste or something. I don't know. The sky's the limit, right? But you got to really clearly identify what that is and make sure that it's not too much, right? Pick 1, 2, maybe 3 key messages, because you can't pack everything into one story. Okay, and then once you have identified what exactly you're trying to say, what is the story you're trying to tell, then you have to remind yourself who you are talking to. And this can be a general audience, right? It could be a whole wide range of people. When we post on social media, we don't necessarily know who we're going to reach with our posts, right? It could be, a mom who's in the park scrolling while her kids play. It could be a scientist. It could be a teenager who would maybe get interested in science after they see something interesting from one of our MSIs. So we have the potential to reach some really critical audiences. We have to make sure, though, that we're packaging it so that everybody can, it's hard, it's very hard, I'm not gonna say it's easy, package those sorts of general communications in a way that might appeal to a broader audience. But sometimes we're talking to a specific, group. Like essentially when we're talking to, like when we're doing CFI reports yesterday, they were saying, make it so that we can tell your story. So there we're talking to, the CFI, right? But that is also kind of, not everybody at CFI might have the same scientific background that you have at your MSI. And so explaining things differently could be of benefit in that situation, right? And that will help them to then take forward your stories. So you want to know what you want to say and who you're talking to. And then once you figure those two things out, there's a few more things that you want to keep in mind. So before we go on to that, though, I want to ask who you think is your main audience. Who is the public that you interact with the most at your MSI? So is it general, like everybody kind of all at once social media? Do you speak to elementary and high school students? Maybe your university has you do like student outreach and attracting students maybe to try and come to your university if you're on campus. Do you have visiting university classes, or perhaps policymakers and officials that want to come and learn more about your facility but don't have a scientific background themselves, right? They're not within the scientific community, so we can treat them like a member of the public. Other university staff that are not in your area, or CFI staff that don't have your same area of expertise, media or journalists coming to interview, or others. So it looks like we're getting university students, policymakers, and everybody all at once, all the time, which is kind of what I was expecting. Oh, but things are kind of balancing out now. Oh, okay. Okay. It's almost split. It's almost, okay. It's a good spread, actually. So a lot of different, maybe not every MSI is doing every one of these groups, but collectively, we're kind of engaging all these different members of the public. Like I said, these results will get saved, so I can share them later on if you're interested. So I'll make that available somehow. Figure it out. We'll figure it out as we go along. Okay, perfect. So it looks like it's settled down a little bit, even though only 47 of you have answered. I want a little higher participation. Okay, so let's get down to some more tangible advice, okay? So I said our first two things that we need to do is identify the message that we are trying to convey and identify who the audience is that we're trying to talk to. And yesterday we were talking about having empathy. And that is a really important thing because that allows us to better understand our audience, which allows us to better meet their needs when we're doing science communication. So the first thing you want to do is know your audience and adapt your message for that audience. And the two major things I want you to keep in mind when you're doing this is that you want to adjust your language, okay? And we as scientists are real bad for this. I even still do it, even though I've been doing science communication for the public for years. I forget what words are scientific jargon and not common knowledge and which ones are not, right? So you want to try and make sure that the language level that you are either writing at, if you're doing a written post or a written article, or speaking at, is appropriate for your audience. So I believe general public, it's like grade 10 or grade 8, something that's like a high school reading level or high school language level is about what you should aim for a general audience. Don't quote me on that, but it's around that. And it's very tricky. So the thing you have to balance is you have to balance using the appropriate language that your audience is going to understand with still being accurate. Now, the nice thing about scientific jargon is with one short word, you can be real specific with what you mean. And that's very handy. But if you lose your audience, it's no good, okay? So you want to try and use plain language wherever possible and avoid jargon where you can. And if you have to use jargon, that's okay. Just make sure you explain it first, right? And then you can continue to use it later on. So if I'm, again, I keep jumping back to fossils because it's the thing I did the most science communication in. If I want to talk about these bones are in situ, I would say, we found a site with a lot of dinosaur bones in situ, and that means that all the bones are in the same position they were when they were still trapped in the rock. They haven't been moved by wind, water, or ice. They're still trapped in the rock the way they were when they were preserved, right? So and then I can say this in situ site, this in situ site, this in situ site, but you guys already know, right? So that's a way to get around it, but try not to do it too much if you can. And avoid acronyms. There's a lot of acronyms. And every industry has their own acronyms, and sometimes the acronyms are the same, but they mean different things in different contexts, and so they can easily get miscommunicated. So you want to try and adjust your language. And the other thing you want to do is try to put things into context. You have to understand what is your audience's frame of reference, what do they have already some experience with, and build on that. And you can ask them, especially if you're in person. You can say, hey, if I was starting a tour, let's say, with those 9 and 10-year-olds, I asked them, have you heard of an atom? Do you know what an atom is? And they all said yes. And then I said, okay, so an isotope is, isotopes are the same element, the same atom, but they have different numbers of neutrons, right? So then I took what they already know, and then I gave them the information. Then I can start talking about how some isotopes are stable and they stay the same, and some are radioactive and they decay over time, that kind of thing. So just to give an example. And so that's how you would get their frame of reference, establish it, and then fill in the little knowledge gaps to allow them to follow along with the story that you're trying to tell. Okay? And another thing you want to do, so you know your audience, you're adapting your message, and now you want to create connections. So we have this expression in interpretation, don't be the sage on the stage, which is what I'm doing right now, I'm so sorry. You want to be the guide on the side. You want to invite people to explore, invite people to understand, invite people to engage with the information that you're telling them. So this is creating connections, both with the ideas that you're explaining, as well as the audience you're explaining it to. So you want to tell a story, and I will go over later some tips for constructing stories, but you want to make sure that your ideas connect together in a logical sequence. They build on each other. Don't just list a bunch of facts at them. And you also want to make sure you're connecting with your audience. Good science communication is a two-way communication. Allow them the chance to ask questions. If they're on social media, respond to comments. Be authentic, because then they feel like you're a real person they're connecting with instead of some, I don't know, like I don't know how to explain it, but just some intangible thing. You guys are real people and you're interesting people, and they'll connect more with what you're saying if they connect with you as a person. Humor can be a really powerful tool. I have vivid memories of some of my first year classes where my professors made really good jokes. I don't remember anything else from first year, but I remember that. So you want to encourage that two-way dialogue, allow them the opportunity to ask questions, even just keeping eye contact with your audience, see if they're engaged, see if they're listening to what you're saying, if they're following along. That's another thing. And make sure that whatever you're telling them is relevant to them. Why should they care about what you're trying to explain to them? How does it affect them? Why is it relevant to them and their lived experiences? And then the last thing I want you to think about, so you want to know your audience and adapt your message. You want to create connections between ideas and between you and your audience. And then you also want to make sure your message is clear. And how you present is key to the understanding of your audience. It's a really great tool to have in your toolbox to use analogies and metaphors. You can, so I put life as like a box of chocolates from Forrest Gump, but anything works. In the AMS facility, we have a tritium lab, so we measure radioactive hydrogen, and I would go around and talk about one of our processes where we use electricity to break the water molecules apart so that we can concentrate the amount of radioactive hydrogen in the sample, because the lighter versions of the hydrogen break more easily and go away, and then we can put the tritium at detectable levels. So when I explain it, I say, we're trying to find a needle in the haystack, so this process, we're shrinking the haystack so it's easier to find the needles, right? So I use something like that, and that makes it a little bit easier. Use visuals whenever you can. This isn't always possible, but you can also be a visual, right? You can explain with your body, you can use gestures and motions, just make sure that you're presenting information, not just listening, but also seeing, and whenever possible, touching. If you have any materials that you can give them to actually touch, that is such a meaningful experience. Not possible on social media, obviously. And the last thing is you want to make it short and sweet, which I don't think I've been demonstrating very well. I do apologize. You want to try and be as concise as possible, while still being accurate, but avoid oversimplification and avoid overloading. So I'll invite you all to wrap up your discussions. And I think folks from CFI have microphones. So if anybody has any observations they want to share about what happened at their table, whether there was something really good that happened or something that was a little challenging, and we can sort of share it with the group. So if you have something you would like to share, just raise your hand and don't be shy. We don't bite. No? 0 people. Uh-oh. So, anybody? Bueller? Okay, good.
Hello.
Hello.
So we had a very good discussion about clinical trials for cancer. And yeah, what I really liked was sometimes when they finished saying something, they would do like a recap sentence with keywords in it. And I think this was really key to understanding what they were saying.
Perfect. So they wrapped up the story with a little bit of a very short conclusion to hit the main points again. That's excellent. Yes, just over here we have some observations. This is great.
Want to get my stuff? Thank you. I had the goal to explain our infrastructure to our high school students.
Okay.
And I went into default into explaining the entire infrastructure like I do when I speak to academics, instead of relating it kind of happened as I was explaining, but
Right.
I could switch. And,
Right. Yeah. It's we know so much about our own facilities, about our own fields, and we get so excited about it. And when I was a child, my mom used to be like, my mom and dad, summarize. They used to say. I had trouble with it. So science communication forces me to use that skill. It can be hard sometimes to figure out which information is most critical, but I love that you as you were going, you made those observations and connections. So next time it'll be easier. So that's fantastic. Oh, yes.
So one of the aspects that came out of our discussions was that we clearly need to prepare more to be able to convey an effective message.
Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes it's nice to have sort of constructed answers. It doesn't have to be stiff, but just knowing, hey, I figured out that this way of explaining something works really well. So when I'm in front of this audience, I can default to that and know that it's going to work every time, right? That's great. Yeah. So have like a little toolbox and just bring out the ones you need in the different situations. I think we can probably at least do one more and then we'll move on because I want to make sure we talk about how to structure a story. Does anybody else they want to observe? Yeah.
So one thing we are doing at the Canadian Light Source is 3D printed things. So high school students come and look at protein structures, plant structures. So they feel, so when they talk, they can relate, oh, I can see through. So that helps a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're taking something that it would be usually invisible and making it tangible for them to be able to see and touch and interact with. So that's really awesome. Plus, it's also a cool technology. All the kids are like, oh, 3D printing's so cool. Or maybe it's not anymore because it's like been around so long. Okay, so now I've been talking to you about connecting ideas and telling a story, but how do you go about doing that? So this is just one way that you can do it. It's a pretty effective way. It's used in a lot of different, industries. I think it's even sometimes used for how to construct a good scientific paper. And that is the ABT method, the and, but, therefore. So the first thing you want to do is you want to start with an introduction or a hook. You actually want to tell the audience what you're going to tell them. It seems counterintuitive. Don't bury the lead. Lead with your most exciting information. And I'm going to talk about this later on, hopefully, if we don't run out of time. But on social media, this is especially important because you have their attention for seconds before they scroll away. Okay. I have, looked at my metrics on TikTok. You have 2 seconds before they scroll. That's the average. The average time that somebody scrolls away is 2 seconds after your video comes up. So you have to be quick and you have to get their attention and make them want to learn more. So you want to tell them what you want to tell them about and do it in a way, if you can, that's kind of counterintuitive or exciting, that hooks their interest, and then give them the full story. Okay. So you want to start out with the intro or hook. Then you want to give them the and. So, and this is the information you need for context. But here is the conflict or problem that we're trying to solve or that we're trying to explain, and therefore this conclusion scenario. So I did a really quick one about our facility. It's not my best work, but just to give you a sort of rough idea, this is the same thing. You get feedback, right? So my intro or hook is I'm trying to explain what the facility is to you. So I'm going to start out what it is. The André Lalonde National Facility for AMS, funded by the Canada Foundation for Innovation. I wouldn't say CFI. Is Canada's Centre for Measuring and Researching Low Levels of Radioactive Isotopes in the Environment. So this is the and. So I'm going to explain what I just said. We detect tiny amounts of radioisotopes. So I said radioactive isotopes, then I put it together as radioisotopes and hoping my audience is following along, right? In all kinds of samples like water, wood, soil, or even fish, our work supports research from many different scientific disciplines, everything from archaeology to environmental science. And right now, Canada and the world are facing some very tough environmental challenges. Researchers need to be able to have these accurate radioisotope measurements to monitor nuclear activities or follow the flow of groundwater or understand past climates to be able to predict future changes. And so our facility is providing that data that the scientists need to address these important issues. And we're going to continue to do that for the international scientific community by giving them this, that, and the other thing. Now, this is not for a high school level, right? But it's just, I was trying to hit the points, right? So I started out exactly what I want to tell you. I gave you the background information you need to understand. Then I gave you the conflict. Things are tough right now, but we can help with the solution. Okay, so this can be adapted into lots of different things. So now we're going to play musical chairs. And I want you to go sit with members of your own MSI because you are going to work on an elevator pitch, which means you have 30 seconds or less to tell somebody who is not in the scientific community what your MSI does and why they should care about it. Okay, I'm so sorry to say that time is up on this one, but this question should remain up, I think, if I move on to the next slide. So you should still be able to enter your elevator pitches, but if not, then I'm so sorry and I apologize. So, okay, we don't have too much time left, and I know there's a lot of people who are interested in this part of the presentation, and so I want to just move on to how we take what we just learned, which a lot of the time here we were practicing in person, right? And it's really easy in person to do that two-way communication, that dialogue. How do we then adapt that to social media? Okay, so how do we take what we learned here and translate that onto the online platforms? And it's going to be the same thing. Remember, think about what your message is that you're trying to convey and the audience that you're speaking with. Okay, so this is just a quick poll. You guys can do it as fast as you want, but just which social media are your MSIs on? Just out of curiosity. If I go to the next slide, can you still answer it? I'm just going to move. Are you still able to answer it if I move? Yes? Is it hasn't closed for you? Okay, good. So I'm just going to move while you guys are doing that. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so I'll be interested to see which social media platforms you're all on. Okay, but I thought I would give you some idea of which are the most popular, at least by the numbers. Okay, so these are the numbers that I was able to find. This is monthly active users, which means at least once a month these people are logging into their accounts and interacting with this platform. Facebook has 3 billion monthly active users. 3 billion people log into Facebook at least once a month. Instagram, 3 billion people. YouTube, more than 2.5 billion people. TikTok, almost 2 billion. I gave a presentation about misinformation on TikTok last May, and that number was like 1.2 billion. Like, it's still going up. It's still going up. X, formerly Twitter, 500,000. LinkedIn wasn't even on this list. I had to go find the number somewhere else. Only 300 million people log into LinkedIn at least once a month. They only have 1 billion users total. So the total number of LinkedIn profiles is 1/3 of the monthly active users on Facebook. So I just want to give you that information to keep in mind. So if you're trying to reach the general public, you might not be finding them on LinkedIn, is all I'm saying. This is a very interesting table that I discovered that also kind of fit with the vibes. I know the vibes is maybe not the right way of putting it. It's not very scientific, but the vibes I've gotten from being on different platforms. And that is, people use different social media apps for different things, right? People who go on Facebook are not necessarily looking, to make professional connections. That's for LinkedIn, right? They're there mostly to talk with their friends and family. That's what I use Facebook for. I use it to keep up with all my friends and family in Alberta that I left behind when I moved back to Ontario years ago, okay? Instagram, they want to post or share videos. But look at those numbers. So these are the percentages of active users on these platforms who say they use that platform for this kind of activity. So just to help you interpret those numbers, so going back to what we had in the previous slide, for Facebook, that's 3.07 billion monthly active users. So 71% of those 3 billion people say that they're coming on there to see their friends and family and interact with their friends and family. That's what they're using the app for. But half of them are also looking for entertainment. I don't know how many of you get down a Facebook Reels rabbit hole, but I certainly do. Anybody else? No? Oh, that's just me? Okay. Instagram, again, they're there to post or share videos, but they're also there to, follow brands or maybe look for fun and entertaining content. Fun and entertaining content, that's on TikTok. People go on TikTok to be entertained. Are you not entertained, right? They want to scroll and they want to discover something new. So if you're making some short form video content, keep that in mind. You can absolutely present them something interesting to learn about. You can put your MSI facility out there, but make sure to meet their expectations. You know, why should they be interested in this? You know, is it fun? Is it entertaining? Can you package that learning and that education in a way that is appropriate to what your audience is expecting? LinkedIn is mostly to keep up with news and current events. So that's where you want to be, you know, maybe presenting some more news and factual items. And this is what we're up to. Not that you can't put it on Facebook and Instagram. Absolutely. Just put it everywhere. It doesn't hurt. Right. And then again, X is they're there to like learn more about news and things like that. But I don't know, X is a weird one because, you know, this is, we'll talk about this later, but, you know, it was Twitter and it was, you know, the scientific community gathered there and then it changed to X and then it all scattered and it's not quite the same. So that's one of those pitfalls when we become to later on. So just to really briefly go over, how is your content getting to people on these platforms, okay? So you start out by creating, you make this wonderful post, this video, it's great, it's fabulous, you love it, okay? You upload it to the platform, okay? That platform's algorithm analyzes everything in that video, the audio, the text on the screen, the caption that you've put in, the hashtags you've put in, everything. And it decides which users it thinks are going to be most interested in your content, are going to be least likely to scroll away. They're gonna engage, and then it serves it up to that like test group of users, right? Different platforms are different. Some of them do more your followers at first and then goes out to other people. Some start out with a random assortment and then it never gets to your followers. TikTok's like that. It's very frustrating. And then based on how that first batch of users engages with the content, whether it's positive, they stay longer, they watch it longer, they like, they share, they comment, they interact somehow. If you get more engagement, then the algorithm is more likely to go, oh, people like this. And the platforms, they want to keep people in their platform. So they are like, I'm going to send this out to more people because it's interesting, right? And then you get this snowball effect where you can get these posts that go viral very, very, very quickly, right? So I've had some posts I think are going to go great and they get like 1,000 views, right? And then I had ones that I was like, I think this is going to do well. And it had 1 million views by the end of the day. And I was like, okay, that was more than I expected, right? So you can never really know, like the algorithm, you know, when I talk to other social media creators, it's like, we don't really know what it's going to do. It's like this mysterious black box and it's you know, they don't tell us. We have certain ideas of how it works and sometimes they tweak it and then suddenly something you did that works doesn't work anymore. So it's a bit of a moving target, which can be frustrating. But this is the general path that things take. And that's how your content will get served out to more users. And that can lead to a lot of potential, really, because you can have a video that if it performs well gets pushed out to more and more and more users, and you can reach a very large potential audience with your message, even more than you thought you would originally, right? And you can reach people that you would have never been able to reach in conventional ways. People can get a peek inside your facility that would never be able to come and visit in person, right? People can get exposed to science who do not have it at their local school and their local community, right? You can reach remote communities this way, right? That don't have access to these scientific educational resources. You also have this great opportunity for these positive interactions. You know, you can reply to comments. You can give a person a positive association with science and the scientific community. If you respond to their, you know, them, I don't know if you've ever had a creator respond to your comment. You're like, they chose me. It's like kind of exciting, right? Like when you respond, that's big. They like it. It's exciting. There's not very much upfront cost, you know, filming videos, you use your phone, you know, it doesn't take much. And it can increase your visibility just in general, even if they don't stay to watch your video, you know, they'll see your facility maybe and get an idea that it's around. And you don't have to risk any of your infrastructure from people coming into your facility and potentially like touching your machines or something like that. So that's kind of nice. But the other problem with social media is that misinformation can spread rapidly. And there are studies that show that it spreads something like 3 times faster, or I can't remember the exact number, but orders of like 3 times more, like 3 times faster than real information. So because misinformation hits that emotional note and kind of satisfies that itch, that kind of drives engagement, even sometimes being like, this is not true, you comment, boom, that drives engagement, and it goes further. So that can be a real problem. And there's no easy answer for that. I'm not going to tackle that right now. There's also the fact that the platforms are privately owned, like in the case of Twitter when it got taken over and a lot of policies changed, and there was you had this established community and established following and established audience, and then that was disrupted. And then also you have changes to the algorithm that you can't predict that's going to affect how your content performs, so that can be very frustrating. And then also fact checking and everything like that. It's, again, more than just for today. So making the content and getting it out there is also very time consuming. And you can sometimes have negative audience reactions or an inconsistent content performance. So it can be a lot of good and a lot of bad. So again, back to basics. When you're doing science communication on social media, you want to identify, why are you posting? What's your message? Who are you trying to reach? And you need to make sure that you're tailoring the information to the audience that you want to engage and put it on the right platform for that engagement, right? Again, we're going to do the same thing. The ABT works so well on social media. You start with the hook. You have 2 seconds to get their attention. So you tell them the most exciting information or the most counterintuitive information or exactly what you're going to tell them about. And they go, oh, I want to learn more. And then they stay, right? And this can be written with the first sentence of a written post, or it can be, you know, with a video. It doesn't matter. And then you're going to go on to tell your story in a way that logically flows and keeps their attention so that they want to learn more, right? And allows them to stay longer, watch longer, and get more of what you want to tell them. And the last one's really important. You want to try and be authentic when you can. Social media really likes authenticity. You know, single creators sometimes have more influence than large institutions because they feel more relatable. When you're scrolling on TikTok, the person feels like they're talking to you, right? So that's that personal connection with your audience that they have, right? So it's something to keep in mind. So these are just some really quick things I came up with that are things to keep in mind when you're creating a social media strategy, is that you want to have a consistent posting schedule if you can, and that is the hardest one because there's so many other demands on our time. You want to try and structure things to invite engagement, so build ways into your content that your audience can interact. And interact with your audience as much as you can. Remember, science communication, we want to try and make it a two-way dialogue. You know, respond to their comments, do response videos, you know, answer questions, do live broadcasts, you know, anything you can to try and make that communication both ways. And also keep in mind accessibility. Make sure that if somebody comes across your page who is maybe hard of hearing, that they have accurate captions. And that benefits not just them, but also, I used to do this all the time, the mom who is watching her kids play and is on TikTok just to disengage their brain for like a second and has the sound all the way down on mute. A lot of people watch short form content on mute and they just read the captions. So captioning is not an afterthought, it's really important. And here are some things that I would invite you to try. Ways to get creative in your social media. Try a trend. Why not? They're fun. You don't always have to, right? I mean, this is the thing. You have to build your strategy. If you really don't want to be silly, then don't be silly because it'll feel forced, okay? But if part of your social media presence, you're okay with having a little fun, you know, maybe try a trend. You know, modify something that's going on now to fit your facility to teach them something new. Make a joke, right? Have a laugh. Maybe work together with other MSIs. If you see other MSIs content, just share that, repost that. We're all in this together. It just helps us out to reach more people. And also, you know what, maybe CFI, like, let them know what you're up to and maybe they want to help you out as well. They have a great communications team. Can I just say shout out to the CFI communications team for all of their support and help that they've done. Yeah, let's give them a big round of applause. It's fantastic. Yeah. They were so helpful with you know, helping me to tailor this to make it more meaningful to you guys because I hadn't been to one of these before. And the last one, I like this one. I don't know how viable it is, but a lot of platforms have the opportunity to go live where people can come into a live broadcast and you can answer their questions live. You can show them, you can do a live tour of your facility and they can be like, what's that machine? And you can say, oh, it's this or it's that or that kind of thing. So that's kind of a cool thing. I don't know if it's possible because sometimes there's other constraints. Okay, so I was going to have you go sit with your other MSIs, but you can do as you wish. Okay, we only have 4 minutes left. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have for the last 4 minutes, I'm going to have you guys talk either, I think you should probably try and find other MSIs if you can. And I want you to exchange ideas. What are some things that your MSI does either on social media or for other types of public outreach that you think is a really cool idea? What is a new idea that you maybe have? Just sort of share and collaborate amongst each other, swap ideas, things that you think might be cool, things that spoke to you. And if you have a moment, I would love to get some feedback. So this is called a 1-minute essay. It's a way to kind of gauge things. So I would love if you could give me one thing you learned today, new, one thing you think you're going to apply from today's presentation, and one thing that you still have questions about or you're unsure about or that was not clear. And that will help, me know that what to change. I mean, I don't think I'm coming back to do this again next year, unless you really want me to. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, just have a quick discussion for the last 4 minutes, and then I'll let you know when to wrap up and go eat lunch. Okay? Okay. Yeah. So go ahead. Please discuss.